man just shake and tremble. Satan is a old dirty thief, so we mash up your plans with only one sprinkle. If you're feeling pain, the blood of Jesus break every chain and remove our stain. Declare this again and again. The blood of Jesus over your family. Plead the blood over your family. This is what to pray and say in the morning. The blood of Jesus over your family. Plead the blood over your family. This is what to pray and say in the morning. When the Vicks and the Bush can't fix this, the blood of Jesus remove all sickness, all asthma and all arthritis. In the name of Jesus we bind it. Jesus is the answer. The blood of Jesus beat out the cancer. Break every chain and remove all stain. Declare this again and again. The blood of Jesus over your family. Plead the blood over your family. This is what to pray and say in the morning. The blood of Jesus over your family. Plead the blood over your family. This is what to pray and say in the morning. When we plead the blood, principalities get trampled. When we plead the blood, generation curse get dismantled. So cover your children and them, your unsafe family members and them. Christ died on the cross for all of them, so start praying for them. The blood of Jesus over your family. Plead the blood over your family. This is what to pray and say in the morning. The blood of Jesus over your family. Plead the blood over your family. This is what to pray and say in the morning.
Blessings, blessings, blessings to all of you wonderful listeners of 103.1 FM. It is a beautiful and wonderful Sunday afternoon, and we welcome you once again to Team Family. We are your hosts, Nell and Adonna. So happy Sunday afternoon to all of you. Adonna, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling really wonderful.
All right.
Very happy today.
Okay, all
To
right.
share this time.
All right. Guys, I'm just checking to make sure that we can hear each other clearly.
Yeah.
All right. So we are back. Last week we had a really good discussion, and we are back for another interesting discussion. Today we are talking about youth care. All right. And in a while we have a very special guest who's going to come on air with us. So get ready for an interesting discussion. And as usual, you are our audience, and we love for you to be a part of what we're discussing. So don't be afraid to share your questions, your queries, your comments. We would like to hear from you. And as usual, the number is 403-1031. So Adonna,
Yeah.
you're excited about our topic for today?
Yes, I am. Last week we were dealing with choosing your friends.
Oh,
your
yes.
children and their friends,
Yes.
and how that could be, and the positives and the
That's
negatives
right.
of
And how it could affect you in the future.
future,
So,
yeah.
yes.
and have friends that are like-minded and
Right.
not negative.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So today's topic is actually going to be, in some ways, going to be related to that in terms of friends. I'm sure we will come to that portion where we actually talk about friends, because friends can influence.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have a very special guest today. Can you tell us a little bit about our guest?
Yes. So today we have my cousin Michelle,
All right.
who is with us on Team Family,
Oh, yes.
and she is a youth advocate lawyer,
All right.
and we're just so excited to have her with us.
Oh,
So in a
yes.
moment she will join us.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm going to read her official bio. All right. So her name is Michelle Bain, and Michelle has over 10 years of experience as a lawyer in Canada within the public, private, and non-profit sectors. She is currently the CEO of Youth Empowering Youth, a non-profit organization in Toronto, Canada, dedicated to providing legal advocacy training and employment assistance support to youth who have been negatively impacted by the foster care system. After starting her career in corporate law, Ms. Bain quickly developed a desire to do more for individuals in the criminal, legal, and family law sectors. This work led to more opportunities for public service within the provincial government of Ontario and federal government of Canada. Ms. Bain joins us today to discuss youth at risk of harm in the foster care system. Her specific focus is the many ways that adults can assist. However, most important to Ms. Bain is how to help youth help themselves. Unfortunately, these issues, when left unaddressed, often lead to much more serious consequences and a major drain on public resources. Building a stronger future starts with the youth of today. Miss Ian,
Hi.
we welcome you. We're so happy to have you with us this afternoon on Team Family.
It is an honor to be here. I really want to say thank you to Adana, my cousin, of course. Family, thank you for having me. But beyond that, I've been listening to your show. I'm actually a really big fan. And the message
Oh,
that, yes, and this is the first time a Christian station has specifically reached out to me to talk about
okay.
this issue. And I don't usually get to talk about my faith and my work at the same time. And the message from the pastor who was on just before myself about, yeah, sometimes you're going to trip and fall, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. Doesn't mean you have to be sad all the time. Christians, but we need to find joy in the challenging times. And this is very challenging work.
All right. Well, so
Yes.
nice to meet you and so wonderful to have you on our program today.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
have to join with Lynette and say I'm so happy to have you on
Yes.
Team Family this afternoon. My cousin, Michelle. Yes, and on Team Family, we use ancient wisdom from the Bible to help to strengthen our family unit
That's
in this
right.
very wired world that we live right in this
Right.
days.
Yes.
So welcome. So happy to have you. I'm so excited.
Me too. I've been so excited all day. I've been prepping. I called my mom. I took a nap. I was very excited.
All right. Well, Adana, I'm sure knows a lot about you, and I know I just read your bio, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself,
Yes,
and
and
your
thank you for reading the bio, but I really want your audience to hear who I am as a person and why I
Right.
do this work. Yes, I decided a long time ago. So to our parents who are listening, to our youth who are listening, I decided when I was 14, yes, 14, lawyer was it. I don't really know how the Spirit moved me in that direction. I couldn't tell you that answer anymore. But at the time, that conviction was really, really strong for me. And there were lots of options, of course. There were lots of great options out there. But this seemed like something that was really going to suit who I was as a person. Granted, I was very talkative, very. Had no issue, in case there are some young people listening, their parents were like, yeah, that sounds like my kid. No issue advocating for myself or others. And I made sure to surround myself with friends who were equally ambitious. None of my other friends from that time in my life became lawyers as well, but everybody followed their own path and their own dream, and they're living it now. So that's actually really important for young people to hear. I'm not saying you have to pick your career path at 14. You don't. But it's nice to have a sense of who you are at that age, so because time moves quickly. And before you know it, you're in your 20s and you're trying to make really challenging life decisions. So this is how I ended up getting here. And along the way, I ended up doing some really soul-searching work about young people, particularly in the last 5 to 7 years of my practice, about young people who I was encountering as a criminal defense lawyer who had been clearly involved with the child welfare system, as we call it in Ontario, Canada. For other places, they call it child protection. Most people know it as foster care. And I was recognizing that a lot of the adults that I was representing in court usually, kind of shuffled in and out. We got them done. They moved along. And then every once in a while, we'd have a young person come through our courthouse. And I worked in a small community called Lindsay, Ontario. It's out in the rural areas of Ontario. And I recognized that there were so many young people who were not from the area, who had parachuted in from really far away, and they were in what we call group homes. And when they were in the group homes, they were extremely, the circumstances, the environment, how you choose your friends, as you say, there weren't a lot of great options. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of oppression. There were a few good staff members who would try to help, but the system they were all in was particularly aggressive. And those young people were often committing crimes on purpose, either to survive within their existing circumstances, or sadly, sometimes just to see me again, or their probation officer, or the jail guard, who's one young lady who was 15, I'll never forget her as long as I live, I don't think. When she would get arrested and would do so very deliberately, stealing on camera at a local Shoppers Drug Mart, she would come into jail and hug the guards and say how much she missed them.
Wow.
So I think it's really part of my calling as what I'm doing beyond being a lawyer, just being a caring adult. And don't get me wrong, I haven't done this work perfectly. I have definitely screwed up. I've definitely gotten it wrong as a trusted adult intermediary. But when you see things like this, you have to keep trying. You do. Mhm.
It is a sad situation. It really, really pains my heart to hear, especially that situation you just spoke about with the young lady having to, she's committing the crime on camera on
Just to get
purpose,
back.
just to get back. It means that there is probably something in the cell or in jail that she's getting that she's not getting on the outside. How do these kids, how do they become foster kids? How do
Great.
children become foster kids?
Great question. So let's talk about the legalities of how this happens. You become a young person in the foster care system when it is deemed by a court of relevant jurisdiction that the parents or the biological family members who you're living with are no longer capable of caring for you. So that's really the nuts and bolts of, well, how do you actually enter into the system itself?
Okay.
So then there's a court order made. Usually that court proceeding doesn't take that long. And before you know it, that young person has an order attached to them. And then the province that I'm from is Ontario, is now you're acting in locus parentis, which is just Latin for we're your parents now. So that's how they get into the system. But usually the steps to getting there can be so varied. They can be so diverse, depending on the systemic racist issues that we have to deal with sometimes in Canada. So there are a very high overrepresentation, a disproportionate representation actually of Indigenous youth, meaning that young people and individuals who identify as First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. So a lot of folks know about the Indigenous culture of Canada. The vast majority of kids in care in Canada come from that community. And it's been clearly linked back, as a lot of people heard in 2021 about the unearthing of mass child graves all over Canada that were tied to what were called residential schools, which is just the old school language for group homes. And so we clearly could see that there was a lot of systemic bias and racism as to why those children were being taken from their parents. The reasons are usually, from a legal standpoint, there's not enough care in the home. There might be substance abuse, mental health issues, or other areas where the child is being neglected or being physically or otherwise abused. The second highest group represented in the child welfare system for us are Black youth.
Okay.
Yes. And right after that are newcomers. So so it's not to say that there aren't any, non-racialized youth who are in the system, but the vast majority of people who are in the system are racialized. And there's also almost always a socioeconomic element to why you're in there, meaning poverty ends up becoming a huge part of why people end up in care. And oftentimes kids who are in care end up homeless. And if they have children while they're experiencing homelessness, or they're feeling underhoused, or they are underhoused, then their children have a higher likelihood of living in homelessness as well. So this can be quite pervasive. It can have a generational impact on a family, and it can be really quite challenging for any individual, whether it's child or parent. And sometimes in certain circumstances, a child becomes a parent within the child welfare system. And in where we are from, so I really can't wait to hear from some of your listeners what the experiences that they have here. But where we are from, if you are a parent within if you're a kid within the child welfare system and you become a parent, often that is grounds for the CAS, or the child welfare system, removing your child from your care, meaning you were raised by us and we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to take your baby too, because clearly you don't know what you're doing.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's a
So
cycle.
yeah, it's a cycle.
Yes,
Mhm.
it is a cycle, and that's that. Wow, I'm here and I'm wondering, I'm thinking, what can we do? I don't know, maybe as a society, what can we do? Maybe as parents,
The church.
at the church,
Yeah.
what can we do to help these situations? Because it sounds like from one to the next, as you said, the foster care, you're in the foster care, you have a child, and then it's taken from you, and it seems like if it's going round and round and round, it's just like it doesn't
Vicious
end. Yes.
vicious cycle.
It can be. But I
Yes.
love when adults, whether they're parents or not, ask, well, what can we do? Be an
Yes.
active bystander. That is so important. I've got a great example that I love to share of one of the young people who works with us. This individual, I won't name them at this point, but this individual was 16 and homeless and in the child welfare system. And they had a job at a local eatery in one of our communities. And their manager noticed that they would never turn down a shift, ever, never. And that's just not normal for a teenager, right? Like, I know you're glad to have your little job, but you're taking every single shift that comes up. Well, that's just a little out of character. So one day the manager, who not a lawyer, not a judge, not in court, not a child welfare worker, none of that, pulled that young person into the office and said, "You're doing a great job. We're really proud of you. We like having you here. But I do have to wonder, at your age, why is it that you're taking all of these shifts?" And then came the tears and the breakdown. "I'm in the child welfare system. I've been placed in a really violent group home. I couldn't stay there. So I decided to go to a homeless shelter because there was nowhere else for me to go. And in the shelters, you're not allowed to stay during the day. You can only be there up until 8 a.m. So they take you in, I think, at like 7 p.m., so dinner time, till 8 a.m. the next morning. So during the daytime hours, this person would have otherwise been wandering the street. So work gave them a legitimate place to be, clothes to put on, and something to do. So as adult bystanders, love is the number one key to what young people need. If you really wonder, what can I do to help as a churchgoer, as a parent, as an adult who cares, what can I give? How much money do I have to donate? Where do I put it? Love is the number one thing young people need. The second thing is consistent attention. If you're going to step in, try your best. And that can be really challenging when you have individuals with a lot of high needs. So obviously know your own boundaries and what your capacity is. But it's really important to be consistent and try to say, here's what I can do. Here's how often I can do it. And I'd love to see you, because that person now knows I can go, like the way soup kitchens are every Wednesday.
Right.
You know that the soup kitchen doesn't have to do everything every single day of the week, but you know on Wednesday you're going to go to that place and they're going to have hot food. You just got to get there on time. So that consistency. So set up what you can actually manage. The soup kitchen knows we can just do Wednesdays. So that person knows, okay, I have a consistent place to be. And also the most important thing is offer opportunities. Our organization lobbies really, really, really hard at every level of government for paid opportunities, particularly summer jobs for young people who've experienced, negativity in the child welfare system. And trust me when I tell you, that has not been easy. That's a challenging job, and it's still ongoing. We have a campaign out right now. And that's in Canada, but it's really important to give people meaningful work and dignity and a place that they can call their own, and reference letters, because sometimes you're the one good source of information about them. And otherwise there's a lot of stigma around, oh, you came from that system, you're probably going to be an issue, or you're going to have a lot of problems, or it's just going to be too much. Let's just go with somebody who's just easier to deal with. If you give them a reference, you give them a good opportunity, and let them shine. Heck, let them fall. Let's not always talk about them winning. Let them lose sometimes. Nobody's perfect. Help them get back up, dust off, and keep going.
Right. They learn from their mistakes.
That's everybody does.
Yes.
Yes, they shouldn't be defined by a system that's governing their life. And we can always do more to make our child welfare systems a bit more hospitable to families and to kids.
Okay. All right. You said something very valuable there. Let them make the mistakes, because people are human beings, and we label them, we look at what they have done, where they've been, and we put them down even before they begin, even before they are given the opportunity to shine. We say they won't make it. All right. But if they fall, that's a valuable lesson right there. Even if they fall, all right, that's okay. They can try again. They're human beings.
Yes, and as a church, we will point them and say that yes, God cares.
Yes,
but we should also show that we too care.
That's right,
and let them know that we value them. We see them as human beings who have potential.
Yes,
and who can make a contribution to the society.
Yes, give them opportunities.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'm glad that you both see that. So thank you.
Yes. All right. So if let's well, I don't know if Grenada and Canada have similarities, but what are some of the qualities or maybe what do I need to know before I become a foster parent? Because I'm thinking in terms of there are people out there who may be good foster parents, because we're talking about, some of these children being in homes where they're abused, and the situation is not good. But there are possibly persons out there who are good candidates who can really reach out to these children, and they can bring them into a home where it's filled with love, where it's filled with compassion, where they can get the opportunities that they need. What can somebody do to become a foster parent?
So glad you asked that. I'm actually going to give a shout out to another one of our family members, and I swear this is not just becoming a Bain event. This is legit. But our family member Anthea, she's so shy, right? Donnie, you can speak to that. She's very shy. But we really connect because we both do similar work. I do that in Canada. She does very similar work here, and I want to talk about the kind of person that I see in Anthea and the wonderful things that she does for people who are not at all related to her. She works for the government in a specific capacity, reaching out to people who are in need, not just youth, but all people in need. Grenada, I think, on an international scale, has one of the most robust and caring capacity systems for looking out for people who are in need. I know sometimes when you're in here, it's hard to appreciate, oh, I'm sure it's better someplace else or whatever. But from a juvenile perspective, you actually, as a country, make individual plans based on that individual's trauma to help that person go from offender to reintegrated into society. High five, Grenada. That is incredible. Honestly, I'm coming from a place of lots of resources and what looks like a ton of privilege. And I can tell you to your face, we don't have that. We don't take that kind of individual approach and care and control of each person. There's a lot of shuffling that goes around. So let's take it from the Antheas of the world who are dedicating their work life, because that's what a foster parent also does. You do get financial compensation for being a foster parent. Now, some people do it out of the goodness of their heart and unofficially. God bless those people as well. But really at the base of it, it is understanding from a trauma-informed perspective what people who've been through trauma need. And there are tons of great free and paid trainings available if you want to become more trauma savvy about how do you actually assist people who've been through that, because there are things and triggers that you need to be aware of. Also, be cognizant of your own capacity. I can't stress that enough. Sometimes folks just see a problem and want to dive right in. I do that all the time. Oh my gosh, let me fix it. Let me put my Jesus hat on and get in there and do something good. And that can sometimes mean that, okay, you get in there and you're not exactly sure what to do, and it can be a bit overwhelming. Yes. So if you have a role within your job that allows you to do this, take that opportunity to learn, get trained, and volunteer your time. I would say that to anyone. We have a lot of, youth homes around the island who need support. Even if you just donate items or you show up 1 hour a week, if you have specific skills, even if you do so on Zoom, give your time. That's a really important way to start and ease your way into it. And keep in mind, if you have kids of your own at home, that's really critical for you to think about what their relationship will be like with these folks who are going to be coming into your space if you decide to actually go the full distance and become a foster parent, so that you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have these young people living with me, or am I going to just go out there and give my time and make sure that they get access to the resources that they need? So I would say, depending on what your capacity is, you might want to think about where you start before you think about becoming a full-fledged foster parent, because that's where you end up having some really unfortunate group home situations that are overrun and not enough resources to go around and all these other things. So I would say start by volunteering and get your training and follow the Antheas of the world who know how to give back, and ask them how they do what they do. Does that make sense? You do what the kids did with me. Find the trusting adult who already knows what they're doing and follow their lead. That would be, because I don't like to give generic advice to people I don't see. So that's where I would start.
All right.
I'm going to keep talking, but I'm also going to close these blinds because it's really bright. Don't mind me.
We're hearing a clicking sound. Not too sure if it's coming from your end, but there's a constant clicking sound on the. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's just a.
I don't hear it, so sorry.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
All right. So we were looking, because we are a team family and we're looking to strengthen the family unit. We are looking at what advice you can give to parents, to avoid the CPA and all the juvenile centers and so. how can a parent start to care themselves for their children?
Great question. Listen to your children. I've had some parents who were praying that their kids would get arrested. Literally. Here's why. Okay, here's why. Sometimes in our experience as professionals, those young people who are really acting out, having a hard time regulating their behavior, regulating their emotions, they become a danger to the parents themselves. And there's no instruction manual on raising a child who's having behavioral issues. There's no instruction manual on raising a child with oppositional defiance disorder, who might, physically pick up an item and throw it across the room. There are some really challenging behaviors children are just often born with, or it can be environment-based. It can be seeing violence within the home. That's a really big trigger often for why kids come into care in the first place, is that they see violence within the space. So keep in mind, what lifestyle are you living and showing your kids? That's really critical. Yeah, sometimes we are so laser focused on how do we get the kid to be a better person? Well, children often do what they see, not necessarily what they hear. So you might be telling your young person, do this, follow these rules, brush your teeth twice a day, eat your vegetables, drink your water, go to bed on time. But if they're in an environment where those things aren't being seen, or there's a lot of inconsistency, oftentimes I've talked to counselors who say kids will get more used to an abusive parent who's consistent than a good parent who's inconsistent, because the abusive parent is who they see all the time. So they just get used to how to deal with that. So keep in mind, think about where you can improve as an adult and what you can cut out of your own life. And those can be really challenging conversations. I've had judges say to clients of my own, you have to choose between your partner and your child, Miss Such and Such, because the partner is the danger.
Okay.
Yeah, so that there are some really tough conversations. I don't want to pretend that those are easy conversations to have. Those can be quite challenging. But the other thing I would say to the parents who were waiting for their children to get arrested, here's why. Once the kids came into court, I have an obligation as a legal professional. The court has an obligation under the Youth Criminal Justice Act in Canada to wrap services and support around a young person who's involved with the criminal legal system. Because as we know, recidivism rates go up, meaning that you're going to get into trouble more and more often if we don't stem this quickly. So we often will invoke things like alternative dispute resolution. So meaning the young person would paint a park bench or get involved in a really positive community engagement. I've seen a lot of young people turn their lives around through music therapy, art therapy, and other forms of expression. Whereas sometimes we think more like punitive. Let's do something that's harsh. Let's lock them up and then they'll learn sometimes. But I've seen it work the complete opposite, and the child just flourishes. But the parents don't get access to that kind of support until they get involved with the youth criminal legal system, which is extremely frustrating for the parents, by the way. Nobody wants that. But I've had parents say, thank you. I'm so glad my kid got arrested because they finally got to talk to some grownups who were going to get things done. So at the school level, I'm not sure where the schools can step in or step up. But when they're the first ones to see it. I tell people all the time, our teachers are our first line of defense. Yes, there was a young man who committed a murder at 15 and a half in Lindsay. And his kindergarten teacher had written a note when he was very little to look out for his behavior. And she flagged it when he was 5.
Oh.
She flagged that very violent behavior and that lack of remorse when he was 5 years old. 10 years later, we were dealing with a murder case in the same town. Yeah.
I agree. I'm a teacher myself, so you see, you're interacting with them every day, so you see a lot of things that parents may not necessarily see. It's true.
Yeah. Or they don't see their child for who they are all the time. Sorry, parents. Okay, your kid shows you one side of themselves when you're there, and a whole other side of themselves sometimes when you're not. And that's so hard as a parent to take in, because you did your best to raise this child, and it can feel like a personal failing. I've seen many parents cry in front of me, even when their kids have gotten arrested for stealing or getting in trouble with the law or whatever it is they were doing. Because as a parent, you can feel like you personally failed. There is no perfect family. There are no perfect parents. There are no perfect children. And God never gives you more than you can carry, even though sometimes you feel like, Lord, you're breaking my back here.
Right.
What am I supposed to do with this child? And like I said, no child comes out of the womb with an instruction manual. None. You have to figure it out and be patient with yourself in the process. Yeah. Spoken like a woman with no children.
Oh
Yes.
gosh, that is a lot of wisdom there. You know, I was going to ask you, how can someone prepare mentally, emotionally, all of that for foster care? But you did mention that there are institutions that help you to, you know, to actually that, well, for lack of a better word, to warm up to that kind of thing, so that you can, you know. But as you said, there's no manual. So
Can I send a shout out and some love to our nonprofit organizations?
oh
So
yes.
oftentimes we put so much pressure on the state, whether it be your Grenadian government or the government of Ontario, to do it all, do the most, look out for them, fix all the problems. Come on, it's your job. However, I have encountered so many absolutely incredible nonprofit organizations, and I'm going to give you one specific example. Another one of the young people who's on our team, she is a survivor of the group home system. That's how she describes it. She survived that. And in the process of trying to finish high school, she's currently enrolled in college right now. Very proud of that. But like I did it myself, but I'm super proud of her. But while she was going through high school, she was really highly contemplating dropping out. And our early leavers from high school, we don't call them high school dropouts, that's really negative language, but our early leavers from high school, again, in the child welfare system in Ontario, very, very high percentage of kids in care don't even finish high school. And in this day and age, in this kind of global economy, not everyone can be an Instagram star. I'm sorry, but you can't. So what do you do without a high school without even the basics of a high school education?
Yes, yes.
So she was literally escaping a very scary group home where there was a lot of abuse going on, and had been wandering in a Canadian winter, which is very cold, homeless and with a friend. And she didn't get any, they were turned away by two women shelters, saying, hey, we don't want kids from care with all your problems in here.
Oh my, oh
Go
my.
someplace else. Yeah, this is the middle of winter, two teenage girls out on their own. And
Wow.
what the shelter said was, go back to where you came from. I'm sure it's not that bad.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So by the third shelter, she collapsed in the lobby. Mhm. She collapsed. She was exhausted. And so
Yeah.
they rushed her to the hospital. The friend went with her. And in the hospital, a nurse was paying attention to the other symptoms of why is this child in our hospital today? Yes, she could have just dealt with the hypothermia. Yes, she could have just dealt with the dehydration, but she looked beyond the medical issue and saw there's a social ill here. And when you come to, we're going to talk about that. So due to the help of that nurse, thank you, bystander, and one of the good workers who was at the original home, she was actually able to find a spot in a privately run nonprofit organization home that connected adult mentors with young people. And one of the mandatory stipulations at staying at that space was that you have to finish high school. Haha. And she says to everyone who will listen that she would never finish high school without the support of that nonprofit organization. We don't have to, I like to quote JFK, ask not what your government can do for you. Ask what you can do for your government. Yeah, that's why I founded Youth Empowering Youth. I was working within the provincial government. I was working for Legal Aid Ontario as a state-funded lawyer representing these clients. And I recognized there was more that I could be doing. And I was almost feeling like I was part of the problem and not part of the solution. And becoming part of the solution is not easy. It's really challenging, but I've been very encouraged by the young people who've been working with me, and more importantly, by a lot of the other nonprofits I saw who saw a gap in service and decided, here's how I'm going to fill it. I'm going to create a space where young people who are having a hard time finishing high school, particularly young girls, can come and stay here. They get a safe adult mentor who's been fully vetted. None of this, we don't know where you came from and you can just work at this group home. Nope, you have to be fully vetted to stay in that space. And then one of the rules, because young people do need discipline. They do need rules. They do need guidance and structure. I believe it was Serena and Venus Williams' father who described discipline as love. Mm-hmm. And look at where his children ended up. So discipline is
you chastise your child if you love them.
And you're on them, right? And this group home is like, we're not your, sorry, this is like, we're not your parents, but we love you enough to stay on top of you finishing high school. And she did. And then she went on to college.
That's good.
Yeah.
You have to care enough to be on their back to make sure that they do what they have to do to help themselves.
Yes.
And set up your capacity so that you can do that.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
All right. So, to those of you who are listening out there, whether you're listening on YouTube, Facebook, you may be listening via our frequency 103.1 FM, wherever and however you're listening. Don't be afraid to text us your questions. You can text us on YouTube or on Facebook, or also on the number 403-1031 if you have any questions. We're talking today with Miss Michelle Bean. You can ask us questions about the foster care system. Any question that you have, any comment, feel free to text us. All right, we're chatting a little bit more. Also, I think the clicking sound is coming from the one of our viewers was paying attention to your microphone, and they say maybe as
Ah,
it's bouncing against your necklace.
Oh,
yes. So it is me. I was like, what clicking sound? You mean my mic? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, viewer. That's definitely me.
I'm not too
Yes.
sure if that's where it's coming, but somebody was just noticing that it's bouncing back
could
and
be,
forth on your
yes.
necklace.
Is it doing it now? Because now I'm holding it
No,
away.
it's
No.
not
It's not.
working. So
Thank
maybe
you,
that's
viewers, for catching that. Yeah. I was like, no, it's not me.
lovely necklace though.
Yes, very nice.
Oh, thank you. More talk about a wardrobe malfunction. Anyway.
All right. So I have another question. As if I am a foster child, if I'm
Yeah.
somebody in foster care,
Mhm.
what are some of the key points or some of the things I should look out for in terms of what should I say? To know that, well, some of them might be obvious, but what should I know and what should I look out for? What do I need to know about the foster care system to see, okay, this is what is happening in my home currently, and this is what I should do?
That
What are
is a
some of the things that the foster child should know? All right, in terms of, should I contact this person? Who should I call if there's some kind of problem? What are some of the points or the things that you think a foster child should know? In order, you
excellent.
said at the beginning that no, you're helping them to help themselves. So how can
Yes.
they? Yes.
Excellent question. I have a whole 10-week summer program on that. So I'm going to try to narrow it down to a few minutes. Number one, if you don't know what to do, try to find just one trusting adult that you can talk to. I actually heard Michelle Obama say that once, and it was really, really groundbreaking for me because you don't recognize that might be you until it is you. So if you're not sure what to do, oftentimes you feel like you can't. There are a lot of trust issues when you've been through trauma. So I really want to be respectful of that. It is difficult to open yourself up and to share with anybody what your story is.
Right.
No one's looking for pity, no one's looking for shame, no one's looking for scorn, and that's often what young people from care will experience. So they tend to hide physically, emotionally, all the things that are going on because they just don't know who they can turn to, who's going to be kind. So try your best to turn your intuition dial up to 10. Okay. And really trust your gut and try to find that teacher, that sports coach, that manager at work, and give that adult a minute to figure out what the heck is going on here. Not every grown up you can trust knows exactly what you need. And sometimes kids in care want that answer tomorrow, and you can appreciate why. That's fair. But know that person is trying their best to help. So try to find and get in their way. I can't stress that enough. People are busy. People will kind of zoom by things, even people with the best of intentions. Don't be afraid to really make your presence felt and say, you're a teacher who I trust, and I know that I can turn to you, and this is what's going on, and I do need some help. That's important. The second thing I would say is, as far as you can, find out what your legal rights are. There's my bias, right? Like I come from a background of being a litigator, being in court, and knowing that the clients who won the day were the clients who knew what their legal rights were. And they walked in there are oftentimes young people in the youth criminal legal system who knew the Youth Criminal Justice Act better than myself and the Crown Attorney combined. They'd been through it so many times. But not every young person, not every person knows that. But to be forewarned is to be forearmed. And if you happen to know what your rights are, even if it's just the three most important. So for example, in Ontario, every child in the child welfare system has the right to know their legal rights. So just start with that. And when you're talking to your worker, I don't know what my rights are, and I understand it's my right to know. So can you explain to me where I should start? And let's talk about, Maslow's hierarchy of need. I need food, I need shelter, I need safety. And then describe in brief bullets, like write down your thoughts. Sometimes if you're in a midst of trauma, your thoughts are all like a highway, cars all over the place, everything's zooming really fast. Slow it down. Write down at least 3 to 5 bullet points of the things you really need, and then stop talking. That's important. Don't just keep going. Say, I need this. I don't have a safe place to be. Here's what's happening at the home front. That can be really scary. The biggest piece of trauma for a kid in care is leaving the home in the first place, whether it's voluntarily or by force. If you need to talk to a police officer, that can feel really daunting and really scary. But try to find a police officer that you can relate to and say, here's what's going on, and I'm afraid, and this is what I need. I need a house, I need food, and I need to be safe. And often it's an older sibling. For the kids who aren't only children, there's often an older sibling trying to look out for the younger ones. Adults, be aware. Please be on high alert. If you've got a young person under the age of 16 with younger siblings, they're not just trying to save themselves. They're often trying to save the really little ones who can't speak for themselves. And that older youth is taking on so many grown-up burdens. They're paying rent on their own. They're trying to scrounge for food on their own. And they're often too afraid to say anything. And here's something for my grown-ups in the room. Often the children who need the most love show it in the most unloving ways. Okay?
Yes.
So yes, I've
Yes.
had youth in care give me the finger. I've had them call me all kinds of names. I've
Yes.
had all kinds of abuse tossed in my direction. And I met that with patience and love. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, I can see you're upset. And sometimes just seeing, especially in Ontario, I had a client once who was 13, and his behavior was so violent, he'd been banned from all of a town called Brampton. So for those of you who know where Brampton, Ontario is, he wasn't allowed to go back. He was 13 years old.
Oh
It's like
my.
banning someone from Satez, like, oh, you can never go back to Satez ever again. Well, wait a minute. This is where he's from. Maybe he can't go back. So
Right.
we had to get to the bottom of, okay, there was a situation in the group home. Him and 2 other co-accused did push a kid backwards down a flight of stairs. Not great. Not going to lie. No, not great. My clients are challenging. My clients in unloving ways. Okay. This is the kid who needed a lot of love.
Mhm.
So I thought, all right, these charges are serious. The kid didn't die. He's okay. So let's focus on what the clients need. So I got the older 2 charges withdrawn. We dealt with them. But the young one is who the police really wanted and the Crown wanted to stick it to. So I thought, okay, let's wrap this one with love, because he is showing some really big prickles. So on his file, it said, do not mention family. So I thought, okay, let's dig behind that. It's too late now. So I contacted the CAS worker and said, give me one family member that we can talk to who knows this child, who can say something good about this person. All we're hearing is how bad he is. All we're hearing about are his crimes against, humanity and what he's done and what a horrible person he probably is. I said, there must be somebody who can speak to who this kid was when he was little, because he still, in my opinion, was little. So we got a hold of grandma. And we brought grandma into the courthouse for what's called a Section 19 conference. And I promote these very, very heavily all across Ontario and across Canada, because it is federal legislation. And what it is, it's just basically a circle discussion where the judge comes down off the bench, or the justice of the peace if it's a bail hearing. In this case, it was. And we talk to the young person and we center their voice in the conversation. And what he wasn't expecting from this Black woman was that I was going to be helpful. In his experience, most of the Black people he'd met had hurt him in some way or let him down. So he wasn't expecting anything different from me. So the very next day, I said to him before he went up into the courtroom, because I don't surprise my clients, I said, your grandmother's here. He looks at me like, you actually got her here? I said, yeah, grandma's here. So grandma comes into the room and starts explaining to all of the adults who don't know this child, who are all just getting paid to do their jobs, what he was like age 0 to 3. His mom was 15 when she had him. She collapsed in a convenience store. That's how she gave birth. That's where it started.
Wow.
Dad was 17 going on 18, and dad did everything in his power for the first 3 years to hang on to the child. They at one point were living in their car and eating pizza. Life was hard. Life was hard. And dad was trying to hang on to the boy. So for those parents out there who are struggling, I hear you. I feel for you. Dad was trying to hang on to the boy so that he didn't lose him to the child welfare system. That's exactly what he was afraid of. But he was just a kid. And then he got old enough that the CAS was like, well, we got to find you. They were looking for him. And as soon as they found him, they took him into care. And then he bounced from one bad foster care placement to one bad group home after the next. So by 13, what was he like? Pushing people backwards down a flight of stairs. So once you dig behind the offense and you talk to the person, and Grenada's already great at doing this. Can't stress that enough. You're already good at seeing past the offense and looking into the trauma that started it. Then you start to see this child as a person and not just a quote unquote a criminal. What I also like to do, I know I'm talking a lot. That's kind of one of my
That's fine.
what I also like to do is when the kids are in really, really big trouble and they think I'm just going to be, mean or blustery or just try to weasel them out of it. Everyone thinks that criminal defense lawyers just get you out of trouble. I ask the children, what are you good at? And they kind of stop like, huh? I said, what are you good at? Can you sing? Can you rap? Can you dance? Are you an artist? Do you like math? What are you good at? And they have to pause because they're so used to just talking about what they did wrong. And
Right.
then, yeah, can you write down for me what you're good at?
Yeah.
And if we're going to put you someplace where you can shine, where should that be?
Mhm.
Start having them visualize the person that they could be. That's really important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a few questions coming in from our viewers.
Okay.
The first question is, if you have a foster child in the USA or Canada, can you take them on vacation with you, let's say to the Caribbean? Is that allowed?
Yes, usually, particularly for people who've got, depending on the strength of your order, but if this child is in your care and control and the CAS trusts you or your child welfare agency trusts you, I would always put in writing when you're leaving and when you're coming back. Think of yourself like any parent in a co-parenting situation. You'd give as many details as possible, contact information, the itinerary, where you're going to be staying. Let's say you're staying at a hotel, all the contact details, and if you have a phone number where you are, and then make sure you provide that to them before you leave. So thank you for even asking if you can take them. A lot of young people who are in foster care get left behind by the foster parents because they say, oh, we're going on a family vacation, but you're not family, so stay here. So thank you for taking them. That's actually a really great experience for a young person from care. That's a family vacation. They're going to broaden. Traveling is great for everybody who's trying to broaden their horizons. So absolutely take them, but just make sure the responsible agency knows where you are and when you're coming back.
All right. Another comment is, I think our local system is trying their best, but what I can often see is that children are removed and cared for in foster or home care and return to their original home, which is a good idea. That's what the person is saying. The problem with this, though, is the persons at home are scarcely rehabilitated themselves, so problems reoccur. And they're saying, blessings, Miss Bean, very useful information.
Oh, thank you. Can I give that person a round of applause for that question? That is what so many advocates internationally, so I'm talking to state organizations in the United States, particularly the state of California and the state of New York. I'm talking to individuals, of course, across Ontario and across Canada and now here in Grenada. And I can't stress it enough. Support the families. You're going to spend a lot less money. Oftentimes, so I'll give you an example that might shock some of you here. In Ontario, there's a case that went around that everybody heard about, where a young Black youth, a child in elementary school, was taken from their parent because they brought a beef patty to school for lunch. And the Caucasian teacher didn't think that that was an appropriate lunch or enough lunch, and they called child protection on them.
What?
And we all heard about the beef patty for lunch story. If I say this in Ontario, all the workers are like, oh my God, yeah, the beef patty. So we all know that that really did happen. Okay, so you're supposed to use in Ontario the least intrusive method. Okay, that's the doctrine. You're supposed to use the least intrusive method to assist the child and the family to get over whatever the harm is. And least intrusive would, in my opinion, would be, well, don't take them out of the home. If there's an issue where mom, dad, or whomever is caring for the child doesn't have enough resources, just taking the child and then waiting 6 months and putting them back, did that change the resource issue? You've got to make sure. And sometimes we send parents to parenting classes and we ask them to jump all over the place. Can you make the resources easy to access? Now that we have virtual opportunities, can you make sure that they get food basket, every month, or they get that great card that Grenada gives out so that you can go to the store and get the school uniform, top up your phone, and get the groceries you need, so you're not being tempted or coerced to spend the money on something that's not for the children. So if you continue to pump your energy into a process that works, that's kind of foolproof, if you will, or sticky finger proof. It's not like a bad partner is going to come in and be like, oh, you got some money from the government, give it to me. Thank you very much. The kids don't need it. No, that money is going to go where it belongs. And when the child goes back, has the parent had a chance to do some rehab? Are they in a healthier relationship with themselves and with their partner? And is there consistent food in the home? And is there enough support for the kids' education? That's really what it boils down to from an outsider's perspective. As a non-parent, that's what I see. Can your kid get to school? Are they hungry? A beef patty is perfectly reasonable for lunch, by the way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And is there a safe physical and emotional space? I don't care how big your space is. I don't care how small your space is. Is there love in there? And are they safe? That's it. So you have to help resource the families, and anybody can be rehabilitated, but are they willing? And if they are the services available? So that person's question is right on the money. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. The availability of parenting session. I think the government has been doing some work on that, but I don't know how widespread it is.
Okay.
But I think that's a really good thing,
Yes.
because
yes.
having children come back to the same attitude
Oh,
is
not a good thing.
and I noticed too that with being around children who live in homes, that some of them were taken in foster care, and then I would return and see them back in the home.
Right.
And I wonder, is what is in the home that they're getting, as we started in the beginning. They must be getting something there
Mhm.
that's making them want to stay.
Yes. So, and some kids do ask to leave. Some young people's parents do have mental health issues to the point where they cannot be cared for in a safe way. So there's the other side of making sure that you've got staff and group, whomever's in charge of. In Ontario, these are often privately owned businesses that are group homes, and they're paid per day per child. So you got to really be careful about. That's why I talk about sticky fingers and people who might have an ulterior motive for getting involved in these systems, because there's a financial incentive here. And if you can cut costs and cut corners on what you're feeding the child. I've had so many young people say to me, my parents were trying their best and I'm not even sure why I was taken. No one explained that to me. And that's flag number one. You have a right to know why that happened. The kid had no idea what was going on. And yet they ended up in a group home where juice and food and water were being rationed. There were locks on the door to the refrigerator, so they couldn't eat food past the hours that the group home said that they were allowed. And they were like, how is this better than where I started? And often kids will vote with their feet and run for their lives. I had one young lady who was in our system. She was one of my clients. Again, 15. It's kind of the golden age, because you're getting older. You're more capable of voting with your feet and running. And she left a bad group home several times. And finally, the worker had basically facilitated her getting into a cab and going down to what ended up being, ended up in sex trafficking, and she ended up in a brothel in Toronto. It was very scary. And she went missing from our community for over 9 months. We didn't know where she was. So our judge, who made the order to put her in care in the first place, racked with guilt, put out an order for a court order for the return of her to the jurisdiction if ever she were to get arrested. We were praying that she would do what she normally did, get arrested somewhere. Because the second she got picked up, which happened, and she didn't commit a crime was committed against her. She was brought into that brothel and she was in sex trafficking and she couldn't get out. And the police did a raid on the brothel the morning that she thought she was going to die. And she ended up, yes, I'll never forget her saying that. So she ended up right back in our courthouse that same afternoon. From morning to afternoon, what a difference a day can make. And so she ended up seeing me, and I hadn't seen her in months. And the first words out of my mouth were, "Thank God you're alive. We've been looking for you everywhere." And then she broke down. Her mother was there, the same mother who the CAS or the child welfare system didn't want her living with. She was there. And that same day she went home with mom.
Oh.
What a wild ride that was. Don't get me wrong. Mom's house wasn't any of our favorite place for her to be, but the group home was clearly worse. And when she confronted the worker, because the worker called her some pretty nasty names to her face, things I won't repeat. This is a Christian show. Yeah, they were that bad. And then the child got a chance to confront the worker on the record in front of the adults in a Section 19 conference and repeated to her what the worker had said to her just the day she was taken into the brothel. And the worker, being so callous because there was just no consequence for her actions, admitted, yeah, I called you that. Yeah, I knew where you were going.
She
Oh,
admitted
wow.
it.
I'm not out here doing this for nothing.
Mhm.
I'm not out here just doing this. When God puts you in a space and shows you something and puts you in that position, it says you are uniquely positioned to do this. Open your eyes, open your ears, and then eventually open your mouth and start talking. Pay attention, Miss Bain, to what is going on around you. This isn't just about the law today. This person was in a position of authority, abused that authority, and put that child's life in immediate danger.
All
And it
right.
took months to find her. And thank God that judge had the presence of mind to use his privilege. So, to our judicial officers listening, use your privilege, make the order, get them returned from wherever they are, because that's how you combat sex trafficking. It's really tricky, but those kids are so susceptible to it, and it's everywhere. I know people don't like to hear that, but these are the kids who end up in there. And then bring them home and then make a plan, talk about it as a community group, and then make a reintegration plan that can work, that you can follow up on. That's what we did, and that saved that child's life.
There's another question here from one of our viewers. How do you address conflict of interest within the system? For example, you have a worker in child protection working against a family to help out a relative or a friend. How do you?
Welcome to my world. So start a nonprofit organization, get some lawyers, and fight back. Seriously, though, fight back. Pay attention. Go to an authority figure that you think can actually and will step in and get involved. And the first thing you want to do, try to get the child to safety. So I'll give you an example about a conflict of interest and how an officer of the court did something that I would not recommend everybody does, but I was super blown away by what she did. We often see that because there's a financial incentive, particularly for the group homes and often for the people, and this, I'm not trying to make, disparage everybody who's working in the foster care system. It is hard, but there are a lot of folks whose livelihoods have been generation after generation of, we've all been social workers in the system. So as many generations of people impacted by it, generations of people who've been making their living and buying their homes and putting their kids through school, and, you're going to be a social worker too. So it's an interesting parallel. I thought I'd just drop that. But in a small community out in Ontario, in Northern Ontario, this is where we have a high concentration of Indigenous communities. There was a 15-year-old Indigenous girl before a judge. Now, I wasn't at this proceeding. The former advocate for children and youth in Ontario brought me into this conversation in 2019. So in that same year, we lost our advocate office. So that judge realized the 15-year-old in front of her was being put in harm's way by the CAS worker. The worker was the problem. This woman was definitely trying to get this child into whatever harm she could, and she couldn't be trusted. So the judge called the advocate office and got us, sorry, this number is no longer in service. That's why YAY exists. Thank you. Just a small plug. And then so she called the ombudsman's office. That was the next step. That was the alternative that they gave. The ombudsman's response was, hey, did you try calling the manager at the CAS? And the judge is like, do you understand who's calling you? Clearly, I tried everything I could. The CAS in this instance isn't doing enough, and this worker is the problem, and I can't seem to get around them. Here's my conflict. So the judge decided, this is kind of extreme, that she was going to take the child home. So she did. She took her home. It gets really hard for the caring adult who's in the middle. That judge put her professional reputation on the line. She put her own, safety on the line. Not that the child was going to harm her, but you're really sticking your neck out if you're trying to help. So that's my caution to everybody listening. When you're like, hey, I see a problem, I've advised people like, this is serious. If you're going to stick your neck out, this can get really intense. So that judge decided, you're coming home with me today. So she wrote the order. She did a background check on herself. Obviously, she didn't have a criminal record. And her son was a principal of a high school. So for the next 10 days, she put the child, because she needed to put her somewhere during the day, she still had to go to work, in the same high school. So she at least knew where she was, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., right? So she had someplace safe to go. And then did her own CAS. She became her own child and youth worker. She contacted kinship placement. So she asked the child, she's 15, do you have a safe family member that I can call? The child is not a baby. She's like, yes, I have an aunt. Here's her name. Here's her contact information. The aunt lived 30 minutes away. She wasn't even far, half an hour away. So the
Okay.
judge did her background check, called the aunt. They did all that they had to do. They met up at one of our restaurants in this northern community. Lots of tears, lots of hugs, and the child was then delivered back to a family member. We are dealing with a lot of systemic racism in Canada. So that Caucasian female judge saw a Caucasian female child and youth worker hurting an Indigenous girl and said, I'm going to use the power of my seat and the privilege of who I am to do what's best. And even for her, the answer was on a temporary basis, you're coming home with me. Get in the car. Let's go.
That's so
Wild.
Sometimes you have to step in for people.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
Children's
Don't
lives
take
are at stake. Yes.
don't just take the kids home though. don't everybody start taking kids home.
Sometimes you're tempted to.
Yeah, you are, and I know so many adults who are like, I hear that story and I can think about the young person I wish I'd put in my car and taken with me.
Yes. Because you never know
Yeah.
if you don't take that step, if you don't do what you have to do, you never know. It might, the next hour, something else might happen. The
don't know
next
what
day.
danger this child could
Yes,
end up in.
yes,
So the
yes.
best is whatever you can do
That's right.
to step in.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to
That's
just brace yourself and take a chance.
That's true.
Yeah, for
That's true.
somebody. Yeah.
That's
And
true.
know your capacity. Know your
Yes.
capacity.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, it has been a pleasure. Can you believe a whole hour has
can't
passed?
believe the time went already.
The time is really up, but we had a very interesting and wonderful conversation. We really got a lot of information. I'm
There's
sure.
a lot to think
Yes,
about
a lot
because
to think about.
situations that you may know of is a lot
Yeah.
to think about, and we are
Yes.
now more empowered to be able to help someone else, someone who might be in the
Yes,
situation.
yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
That is the goal. Ladies, this has been an honor. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my faith journey and my work journey and to just share with your community, your audience and your broader community what this looks like and feels like. I hope that this message has resonated and landed with those of you who are listening. This work has really become something that's not just the work I do, it's a calling that I've answered. Like let's do more. So this hour flew by. I was like,
Oh,
it's been
yes,
like
it did.
15 minutes.
Oh, yes, it went by quickly, but a lot of information went out to the public. I am sure it is. Well, I am sure, I'm positive it is useful to all of us who heard.
Yes.
All right, we are going to do something with that information.
And it's
Very
also,
useful.
empowered us to be able to, be a one who would step in for youth and make a difference in their life
Yes.
and understand the value of our young people.
Yes,
They are our
yes.
future.
They are.
Yes.
Give them half a chance. I'm telling you, your trauma can become your triumph. And your Tiffany Haddish, for those of you who know her, she's a very popular comedian and actress, grew up in the foster care system. She also started her own charity called the She Ready Foundation, where she gives kids from foster care a suitcase because they get moved around so much and often their belongings are in garbage bags. It's the little things. You don't have to be a celebrity to do it. But just because you started from a hard place doesn't mean you can't end up someplace awesome. And then you use your reach to help other people too.
Yes, well said.
Again, I just want to thank you for joining us today. It has really been a pleasure. You have me thinking a lot of thoughts going through my head now regarding all of what we spoke about.
Good.
It really is hard out there for the foster
Children.
children. It really is.
Yeah,
That whole system can be so complicated, and children's lives are at stake.
that's right.
I
Thank
wanna
you.
And thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us this evening. It has been a pleasure.
Cousin, anytime. Thank you for asking.
Oh wow! Some of our listeners saying they're waiting for session 2.
Oh boy. Happy to come back. I love having this conversation with you all. Let's chat again.
All right.
Bye, ladies. Bye,
So
guys.
thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
You have a
You too.
wonderful evening.
Oh, yes. And to
Take
all our
care.
viewers, we'll be back next week with another topic again. Don't forget, Team Family is all about building relationships and families. That's what we're all about. So we'll be back next week with another topic, another interesting topic. All right. So we'll see you at 5 p.m. next Sunday. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Blessed day to everyone. Bye.
Hey, you can't touch me. Lucifer, you can't touch me. Furthermore, take your filthy hands off me, family.